Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
But you haven't.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing. He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
I'm a fatty fat though.
What's up, everybody? You know what time it is. Monday. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf. Welcome to Around the Nation. We're going to have some fun times, fun stories, as usual, mix of disaster and Republican nuttery. We've got quite a bit of that here. Let me just start the show by saying welcome. Welcome. If you haven't already, please like and share the stream. It's going to be a lot of fun today. So let me just, again, start out by saying, or asking all of you, anybody else here have the case of the Mondays? It's bad. It's bad. But hopefully some of the political stories and stuff we're going to cover is going to get us all to a little bit of a better mood, I should say. A little bit lighter mood. Nonetheless, hopefully every one of you had a great weekend and are excited to start a brand new week. All right, so let's do a breakdown here. So we're going to have a little fun. Show an interview with a couple of Trump supporters. Total insanity in those interviews. That's going to be fun. We got Ben Shapiro gets owned by a 8-year-old. That's also a lot of fun. We have more dangerous stuff, though. For example, there's a story of, and this is a fascinating story, by the way, a MAGA supporter, no, not just a supporter, but a candidate in a Virginia election that is threatening a butterfly sanctuary. Insane. It's just total insane. We've got DeSantis, literal Florida Nazis, and then, of course, the CIA Havana syndrome story that I didn't get to last week. So, hey, it's going to be fun. It's going to be an interesting story. So please like and share the stream. Very important. All right. So now that hopefully everybody's doing pretty well here, probably 8.5 to be fair to Ben Shapiro. Probably true. Man, just yeah. That's gonna be fun. Those are such fun videos to show you on that. All right, so I guess let's get started. Trump rally, go. All right. Former President Donald Trump claims that he and his followers are some of the greatest people, the smartest people, the best people. You know, tremendous, amazing, the elite of the elite, very, very smart people. Now, apparently, they're not so good at spelling.
Is that how you spell villain?
No. A-I-N. V-I-L-L. A-I-N. I grabbed the wrong graphic when I sent it to the t-shirt place to make a prototype.
But you still wore it today.
Yeah.
Nailed it. Great job. Look, again, this is a real Trump supporter. This is being interviewed by a comedian. In this case, Jason Selvig, one half of the Good Liars. Because let's be honest, comedians out there interviewing Trump supporters, that's a gold mine. It's some funny shit. Parody has nothing on reality these days. I mean, again, if you're a comedian, this is like the golden years, especially like during the Trump era. Like, you don't really have to go and do much anymore. Oh, new materials. Who needs new material? New jokes? No. I'm just going to go out and talk to Trump supporters. That's all I need to do. And it's because the world has become, probably one of the real world has become the greatest tragic comedy anybody could ever encounter. I've said it before plenty of times. If you're not laughing, you would want to cry because it's just insane. All right, so now 2 more examples here. So now there's that same guy. We're going to see a little bit more by him, and he's going to explain why he's not pro-vaccine. And then, I should say first, we're going to have a listen to an older lady explain why no evidence whatsoever could ever convince her that there wasn't any voter fraud in the 2020 election. Take a look.
Donald Trump has never admitted defeat in his life. That's why he wouldn't admit that he lost the election, and that all this voter fraud that he keeps claiming happened didn't actually happen, and Joe Biden won by 7 million votes.
I believe there was voter fraud. I actually believe it.
And have you seen any evidence?
No, they're not going to show me any evidence, but
right.
No, I believe there was voter fraud.
If somebody let you count every single vote yourself, and you could see that Joe Biden won by 7 million votes, would you still believe it? You still wouldn't believe it?
Nope, I still wouldn't believe it. I believe there was a lot of fraud.
Why did you make the decision not to get the vaccine?
For me, type O negative blood. I do smoke, and there were studies that have come out of France. Nicotine users tend to also not be susceptible to things.
Interesting. So nicotine users are not susceptible to things. Lung cancer might be one of the exceptions.
Well, I don't smoke any of the name brand stuff.
Oh, well, that's the difference. If you just smoke the non-brand name stuff, then apparently you're going to be okay. No, that's complete and utter nonsense. I'm going to explain why, of course. But going to that woman, like, no evidence whatsoever. If you were to count the ballots yourself, and still you would come up with the same amount of ballots, that were counted towards Biden versus Donald Trump, and it came up the way that you didn't like it, then you just wouldn't believe it. Again, 2 different, complete different realities that they just create for themselves. It's a bubble, and it's impenetrable. So now, let's go to the guy first when it comes to the COVID, right? So, look, I'm a smoker, and smokers apparently during this French study, we couldn't, we can't get COVID. It's a prophylactic, it protects you. No, it doesn't. So now there are 2 different French studies that have come out, and they're pretty. Let's just say they're full of some holes, right? So now both of them are not peer reviewed. So that's a big thing. That's a big problem when it comes to studies, because peer review actually goes and takes it and says, okay, this is how you looked at it. This is your methodology. So let's try to replicate this and see if it holds up to scrutiny. These have not been peer reviewed. All right. And so now the other thing that's a big red flag, at least about one of the studies, and not only, of course, do both have massive limitations and both come to the conclusion that, oh, yes, if you use nicotine, then that will somehow prevent COVID infection or help you prevent COVID infection. So now the red flag here comes from the Changzhou study or Shenzhou study or whatever. I can't say the name. You know how terrible I am with names. All right. So, but anyway, the man who did it, one of them was Jean-Pierre Shenzhou, who happens to have had or has long-standing historical links to the tobacco industry. Fascinating. So now let me give you the details on that. Between 1995 and 1998, he had received grants amounting to a total of $220,000 from the Council for Tobacco Research. Interesting. And in the late 1990s, he had actually become a collaborator and advisor for something called Targacept, a pharmaceutical subsidiary of the tobacco company R.J. Reynolds. And in 2006-2007, he had supervised and published studies funded by Philip Morris International. You know, the same people who basically said, oh, you know that link between smoking and cancer? You know, that's not really a thing. I mean, what link? There's no link. No, cigarettes don't cause cancer. Here you go, John Boehner. Here's your checks. You will now hand these out to your members of Congress who are bought by the tobacco industry. Interesting. And very, very interesting. So again, the person who says nicotine might be able to stop COVID just happens to have had a long history of being paid by the tobacco industry. But I'm sure that's just a coincidence, right? I'm sure that's just a coincidence. Look, you got to follow the money. You got to follow the money, folks. And that's it. Once you do, once you follow that money and realize who's getting paid by whom, you can kind of see why people say the way that the things that they do. And I'm not saying, by the way, the pharmaceutical industry also doesn't employ an army of lobbyists. That's why we don't have Medicare being able to negotiate prescription drugs with drug companies. But when it comes to the vaccines, again, it's in everyone's best interest to have a vaccine that is safe and effective and that works. And so you can say, oh, you know, the practices of big pharma are, you know, corruption and lobbying and price gouging. And you would be absolutely correct. In fact, while they were fighting against that provision in the original Build Back Better program, they actually ended up raising the price of about 866 different drugs. Gee, I wonder if they're also based on corruption and money. But at the same time, when you're looking at the efficacy of vaccines and the studies that have been done on them and how they don't really make that much money off of vaccines, at least when it comes to, you know, actually selling the vaccine, you know, again, just look at all the research, all the published and peer-reviewed research on the vaccines that are out against COVID-19 and all the other vaccines that have been shown to be incredibly safe and effective. Anyway, as far as the woman goes, she's an example of too far gone. She huffed way too much copium, right, when it comes to Donald Trump, and will unfortunately never be shaken out of her alternative reality. Do not be like these two chuds. Only 866. Now people are dying from diabetes here in the USA. Unfortunately true. Unfortunately true. And that's just this year. Let's move on. It looks as though Ben Shapiro, the heavyweight of the intellectual dark web, conservative thought leader, might have finally met his match. And it's a child.
Government is what takes all of your money and gives you very little in return.
That is not true.
Okay, that's kind. I mean, it's kind of true. It depends on the kind of government.
Taxes are for.
Yeah, that is what taxes are for. But taxes are theft.
Taxes are theft. Ben Shapiro destroyed by facts and logic. By a third grader. All right, so look, I got questions about this. That's fun and all, but like, all right, why is Ben Shapiro in a classroom pushing anti-government propaganda on kids? Now, again, he's not there to teach people about the government, right? No, you clearly see, and I'm going to show you more video of it, you can clearly see that there's bias here. I mean, again, he's in a classroom saying taxes are theft, taxes are stealing, and by the way, is part of the side that loves to criticize the left for so-called indoctrination of children. What the heck? That's not education. That is a biased opinion. Now, look, Ben Shapiro is more than allowed to have that opinion. I believe it's wrong, but he can have an opinion, and he can share his opinion. But what he's doing in that classroom is trying to pass off that opinion as fact. That's not actual education. That is, again, trying to propagandize to children. Now, there's more.
Taxes are, the government takes a part of the money that you spend, or the money that you earn, or the property value of your house.
On useless stuff. What about debt?
Mostly, yes. I mean, they're supposed to spend it on things like the police. They're not supposed to spend it on just random projects or silly things that they have in their head, and they tend to spend it on kind of silly things very often. But as you get older, you will realize how little you like taxes.
Yeah, he's way off base about that.
I come from a state called California,
Oh, I
where
like
monsters roam the streets and garbage is strewn everywhere. I think that Biden kind of makes up the rules as he goes. I don't think, unfortunately, he cares very much about the rules for being president. I think he just tries to do whatever he can do. Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia is my current favorite Democrat. He's preventing Joe Biden from doing a lot of bad things. So, guys, you just learn more than you will in all of college about how the government works.
No, yeah, they've learned the wrong things. Like the complete opposite of reality. What? No, you're, and he's doing this in the classroom. And by the way, he's like, yeah, taxes, taxes are theft, but they're also supposed to pay for police, which we need more of. We need more police, because California is a garbage-strewn hellscape where the monsters roam the streets. Garbage is thrown everywhere. Yeah, it's horror. It's horror. And also, Biden does whatever he wants. Total propaganda. Total propaganda. So look, let me make a point here about California, right? And police. You know that California and San Francisco alone, they actually spend about 9% of the city budget on police. But it turns out to be the 7th largest police budget in the country. You know how much they spend? Over $700 million. That's a year, the annual budget. All right, so now in total, policing across the country costs about $115 billion a year. So guess what? We are actually spending a lot of money, a lot of tax money on police. But no, according to Ben Shapiro, no. We only spend tax money on silly things. We should completely abolish taxes. Yes. Well, okay, what silly things are we spending things on, Ben Shapiro? Roads and bridges? I mean, those are kind of important, right? For example, that bridge that went out in Pennsylvania, it happened last week. That was a disaster, right? Well, turns out that might not have happened had the fuel tax that was designed to make sure to fix up the roads and bridges in Pennsylvania. About 3,000 of those, by the way, were estimated to have been structurally deficient. So they did this gas tax, right? And this is back in 2019, a bunch of articles came out. And they noted that about $4 billion in funding over 6 years, over a 6-year period, from the gas tax had went Not to the roads, not to the bridges to fix them. No, it actually went to the state police. Wow. Yeah. Oh, your silly bridge projects. No, we need more cops. We need more cops. Really? Really? So again, what is it important for things like that we need for society, Ben? Or is it just what? Or is it theft? Or is it just theft? I mean, come on. Look, and one thing, of course, that I think we've all noticed here is that Ben Shapiro only goes after people that he believes is fairly weak, right? For example, propagandizing to children. But this is something that PragerU has done a lot in recent days as well, creating an entire propaganda channel to teach conservative values to children. And so, yeah, there's I think it's PragerU Kids or something like that. And now this is videos like from Conserva-Kids or something. And so they, you know, again, they say, oh, well, it's a left that's indoctrinating the children. When in reality, you've got videos like this that exist. And where you have very, very clear cases of conservatives coming into schools, conservative speakers, and teaching them propaganda. But anyway, as I mentioned, those are the only people that he really talks to. Children, college students, you know, people that are on the street. And that's where, of course, he got famous for doing, oh, college kid destroyed and owned with facts and logic online. No, he very rarely, and there are instances where he has, but it's very rare that he goes up to somebody who will actually counter him. And when he does, again, look up the debate between him and Anna Kasparian, where Anna handed him his ass. Owned him with facts and logic. And by the way, you watch some of those debates, and yes, oftentimes he backpedals, or you know, he concedes certain points, but also ends up just looking ridiculous. And it's not because Ben Shapiro is a stupid person. No, I think Ben Shapiro is a very intelligent person, actually. But it's because he's paid to defend stupid ideas. And there's a reason. There's a reason for that. He's paid very handsomely because it keeps some very rich people from being able to have to pay any more taxes into the system. That's why he says taxes are stealing. Taxes are stealing. Well, it steals from their, you know, from his bosses, from his donors. Now, let's give him one thing though that he did say that was that he's got a point. We don't get a lot from the government as a result of what we pay in. No, that's not because, well, that's actually because Republicans and corporate Democrats take a lot of money from corporations and then don't use it to make regular people's lives better. That's the reason that we don't have, for example, universal health care. So they do take it, and instead of, you know, doing it on what he says, silly projects, right? In reality, what we're doing is basically making skeletons in the Middle East and in Africa and all over the world with our war machine. That's what we're doing with our tax money. Now, the solution isn't to eliminate taxes. The solution is to actually use the tax money to help the regular American people. You know, regular human beings. Healthcare, Medicare for all. And actually doing something, I don't know, that helps the environment. Be real nice. Be real nice. But as I said, you know, Ben Shapiro defending some very, very powerful people. Now, one more thing here, one last thing, and this is the kid who spoke up. Here's what he said. I've seen my mom look at him on Facebook. He said he was a very smart guy. Asked by the producer if he agreed with that assertion, the boy said, well, now that I've met him, maybe. Maybe. Nice kid. Seems like a nice kid. Seems pretty respectful. And I'm pretty sure he wasn't buying at all what Ben Shapiro was selling. Did I get a raid on Twitch? Hold on here. I'm getting a notification. Mark Monkey, thank you. Thank you for raiding with a party of 4. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Mark Monkey viewers. Everybody go and follow Mark Monkey back. Give him a follow. And thank you again for joining us. We were just talking about Ben Shapiro, as you can see. And we've got more stuff. We have MAGA versus the Butterfly Sanctuary. Ron DeSantis and the Nazis. And we've got the CIA admits Havana syndrome not real. Those are some great stories. He was being polite. He was being incredibly polite. What a good kid. And by the way, I like that other one. That other kid who was like, yeah, not buying that either. He was way off base there. Thank you, DJ Big Mikey B, for subscribing with Prime. Appreciate that. All right. Let's move on. Let's get to the next stories here. They will not wait. A Virginia Republican candidate was recently caught menacing a Texas butterfly sanctuary. Huh. So now this is a bizarre story involving a very bizarre person. And that is Kimberly Lowe. So Kimberly Lowe is a Trump-supporting candidate for the 5th District of Virginia. And so she has apparently been spotted on the property of the National Butterfly Center, a private nature preserve in Texas's Rio Grande Valley. So now I'm curious, like, why would you show up in Texas to a butterfly sanctuary? Well, now she said that, we're here to see the illegals, the ones that are rafting over here from Mexico. Ah, yes. Now, this is according to the executive director of the sanctuary, Marianne Wright. So she had told the Daily Beast back in that on January 21st, 2 women had showed up at her sanctuary. Lowe and a woman she claims was a Secret Service agent. Now, look, if you're a candidate for a state-level house, which is what she is, I believe the Virginia House of Delegates, you do not get Secret Service protection. That's super weird, right? That's super, super weird. All right, so, but now, why the butterfly sanctuary? Of all places? Well, now, Wright explains to the Daily Beast that it's a frequent target for conspiracy theorists, after her and her colleagues had opposed the Trump administration's plans to build a border wall through the middle of the property. So everybody remembers, like, oh, I'm going to build a wall. It's going to be the greatest wall. It's going to be the biggest wall. In fact, when it comes to the context of other walls, no one will build a wall bigger. It's going to be tremendous. All right, so anyway, part of this wall plan, and I remember talking about this, where it would cut through private property. And of course, there are people that didn't want to sell that private property to the government. And so there was a huge concern about eminent domain, which is literally the government grabbing land and using it to build federal projects on, which again is total irony. So now this place, this was right in the middle of the sanctuary, is one of the places where they actually wanted to build that part of that wall. So now, although, and they explain, the National Butterfly Center is located in Texas, Donald Trump's proposed wall would run 2 miles north of the U.S.-Mexico border, bisecting protected land. In 2019, the center filed a restraining order against a construction project. Now, by the way, there's a private construction project. This wasn't even the government. This was Steve Bannon and Brian Kohlfaage's We Build the Wall project that had scammed their own supporters out of millions of dollars. In fact, that's what Steve Bannon went to prison for before he was pardoned by Donald Trump. So they had absolutely no authority to go and try to bully preserve this sanctuary out of their land. Total insanity. But then after they had pushed back against that, the owners, and they had a whole court hearing about it, a court filing, I should say. Turns out the conspiracy theorists, the MAGA chuds, they were not happy with this. In fact, one Trump group, the We the Build the Wall campaign, as I said, targeted the center with conspiracy theories. Brian Colpage himself, the leader of the group, repeatedly tweeted that the National Butterfly Center was harboring, you're not going to be surprised about these allegations, an illegal sex trade and dead bodies. It always comes down to that, doesn't it? He tweeted in 2019, the only butterflies we saw were swarming around a decomposing body surrounded by tons of rotting trash left behind by illegals. Now, by the way, let me just dissect that language for a second here. Notice how all their descriptions are, for one, false, completely false. But people who want to believe in this stuff look past the falsehoods, and what they do is that they look at the language. Disgusting, rotting trash, decomposing bodies. Oh, disgusting. And it's there to trigger their lizard brains to think, oh, gross, disgusting, horrible, oh, horrifying, it's the children. By late 2019, and it gets worse, conspiracy theorists were circulating memes falsely accusing the National Butterfly Center of being a front for sex traffickers. Wright and colleagues faced in-person threats from members of militia groups like the Oath Keepers and the Three Percenters, as well as threatening phone calls and emails from a man who was later revealed to even be a Texas police officer. Texas police. Insanity. And of course, unfortunately, that type of insanity ends up leading to violence. And by the way, there was a video that's made, live streams that were since deleted by Facebook, that Lowe had made of her interactions, of her going and literally menacing the people at the butterfly sanctuary. In fact, you had Lowe and her colleague Michelle. For one, there's one video that had her watch Border Patrol agents detain migrants, which I assume, of course, they cheered. In fact, Lowe had described herself as saying, I've got my own 9mm just sitting right here. I couldn't wait to use it. Couldn't wait to use it, I imagine. In her affidavit, Wright said that she approached Lowe and Michelle and informed them that they were trespassing on private property. An audio recording shared with the Daily Beast, which I do not have right at this moment, shed some light on some of that confrontation. Here's what Wright says, quote, "You're here to promote your agenda, and your agenda is not welcome here." Michelle counters by saying, "You're not for keeping the illegals out? So you're not for helping all these poor people in this humanitarian crisis?" Lowe adds, "You're okay with children being sex trafficked and raped and murdered?" It's not real. That it's not actually happening. I'm not saying that there isn't trafficking or sex trafficking. Of course, it does happen. And by the way, there are people that pay others to traffic them to the border. I believe it's Coyotes, right? Is one of the groups. Now, why would they pay people to smuggle them across the border, or at least to the U.S. border, across the Mexican border? Well, it's to get people away from crushing poverty, drug gangs, violence. Right now, those countries in Central and South America, some of them are very unstable. And that's partly because of us, the United States. You got the drug war. You got the constant overthrowing of leftist governments by American corporate-backed interests. Of course. Now, when you look at it and you look at what's going on in those places, well, I mean, you can't help but think that the immigrants are victims, because they are. So now, with that in mind, wouldn't you want to help them? Wouldn't you want them to be able to come to America and claim, refugee status so they could start over and not be in those horrible conditions, and perhaps, also do some policy changes? For example, when you get into office, like, hey, let's not do the drug war, and hey, let's fund these governments and stabilize their governments and not maybe do, say, AI-funded coups in those countries anymore. Well, wouldn't that be a great thing? That would actually stop a lot of what's going on in Central America. And so now they don't want to do that. No. What they want to do is they just want to build a wall. That's it. That's it. I mean, it's insane. They just want to build the wall and ignore everything else going on in the world because they're scared. It's fear. It's just fear. All right, so now there's more of that exchange. When Wright asked the pair to leave, Michelle claimed that Border Patrol told them that they could enter the property. Well, that's not true. Or as far as I know, that's not true. It's still private property. But then she added, I'm federal. I work for Secret Service, so nothing is off limits for me. Huh. Press X to doubt. Now, when Wright asked the pair to leave, Michelle claims that Border Patrol told them that they could enter. Oh, I'm sorry, I read that already. As Wright laughs at Michelle's claim, Lowe appeared to begin narrating a video. So we're here with a woman who is not a very nice person, who's okay that children, and then of course the audio cuts out because Wright actually, and this is where I believe that she wasn't in the right. Ironic, but she tried to take her phone. Again, that's not the right thing to do, but I get why. She explains in her affidavit that Lowe had her phone up and appeared to be filming her, given Bannon, Colfage, and neo-Nazi Hardy Lloyd and other various outlets had published and broadcast videos of me, along with threats to the center, me and my children. I panicked. I moved to stop her from doing this and knocking or taking away her phone or retreating inside the building to wait for the police. So again, I don't agree with trying to take her phone, but I can understand the reasons why. Absolutely. When you've been targeted by these people, and threatened and all that stuff, again, you're going to try to defend yourself, but I still don't agree with actually trying to physically take her phone away, which can instigate more violence. In fact, according to Wright's affidavit and the audio record, somebody had shoved her to the ground. Get the F down, bitch. One of the visiting women is heard shouting. A scuffle ensues, after which Wright accuses the women of taking her phone and refusing to return it. The women leave as another Butterfly Center worker says to call 911. In Lowe's now deleted Facebook Live video, reviewed by the Daily Beast, Lowe and Michelle returned to the car, where Michelle claimed to have Wright's phone. In her affidavit, Wright said that her son went to close the center gate to prevent them from driving off with their device, and of course away from the police. She says Lowe nearly hit her son while accelerating towards the gate. In her deleted video, Lowe appears to drive towards someone, presumably Wright's son. Get the F out of my way, the congressional candidate says. Get out of my effing way. Get the F out of my way. Jesus Christ. Oof. Reached for comment, Lowe denied Wright's account of events. And here's what she said. In short, this woman verbally and physically assaulted us, stole my phone, kidnapped us, and tried to keep us from leaving. Kidnapped? Wait, whoa, kidnapped? Really? There was a physical altercation, and they were waiting for the police. Now, she also claims that they had filed a false police report, which the police have already found to be untrue. I don't know the details of that. And when she couldn't get me on anything because this is a purely political attack, she is now making up more stories, saying I tried to hit her son when she ran to the gate to lock us in and block the exit with his arms out. I did not try to hit him. Jesus. Lowe then offered to send the Daily Beast her footage, but then said that she was unable to because of the large file size. Yo, you ever heard of Dropbox? I mean, hey, look, if you want to get your story out there, your side of the story, and show that video that you had deleted from Facebook Live, because I don't think it was Facebook that deleted it. I think she deleted it. Okay, just Dropbox it. Or yeah, like turn it into a zip file. Do something. File compression. I'm sure you can figure it out. Wow. Again, this is total insanity over, I mean, just over nothing, or conspiracy theories. If she had not believed in insane conspiracy theories and spread them, by the way, then she wouldn't have been there, and this would not have happened. And this woman wouldn't be fearing for her life. Now, one of these things feels like a campaign stunt from a failed candidate. Now, the weird thing about her is I looked into her a little bit, low, and she had apparently been at least according to the Republican Party, of a different county that she had tried to run in. I believe it was the 75th district in Virginia. She had to leave the race, running as an independent, and had formerly supported Bernie Sanders. Very, very, this is an insane story from somebody who apparently was a Bernie to Trump person, because now she's a registered Republican and is running on "We hate brown people." Wow. Just wow. By the way, one more thing too. That butterfly sanctuary had to close over this weekend because of the possibility of threats and violence due to a right-wing rally that was planned about the same time. That was pretty nearby. So that's what's going on. All right. It's scary. It's the anti-establishment part that gets them, as some of you explained. Yeah, look, as I explained, like, anti-establishment doesn't mean left. It really isn't. You can be anti-establishment, and I don't really care. What I care about is what you do, what you try to build after the establishment. The old order is dismantled, right? If you're trying to build something that's positive, that helps regular people, gives everyone health care, et cetera, and generally does leftist policy solutions, because I believe that those are the right solutions, then we're good. But if you're somebody that wants to tear down the establishment and just replace it with, right-wing QAnon nonsense, no, then I don't agree. I'm not going to work with you. I don't really care. And so that's why I can't really ally with these people, because they're not comrades. They're not allies. Bernie to Trump people do not surprise me. Yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot of weirdo derangement stuff going on too. But anyway, I'm going to move on. We're going to go and talk about Nazis. Sorry for the lower third. I didn't have a choice. I had to. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is apparently getting some heat for not criticizing Nazis, like actual Nazis. Now, there's video circulating of an event over the weekend on Twitter, which showed a handful of people, Nazis, that were standing outside a strip mall in the Orlando area of Waterford Lakes, a relatively small gathering of people who were very much and very obvious neo-Nazis. Take a look.
Hey, look, what he did. No more Jews. You get some black power, you got white power. White power. White pride's when you think it. White power is when you live it.
All right, so look, I showed you that because obvious Nazis. Obvious. Because, and the thing is, unfortunately, when you say that, like, oh, these people are Nazis, right? There's always those people that show up and that are like, how dare you call anything the right does Nazis? You're just making it up. They're not actually not. No, the literal Nazis. And there was far more that were there. Far more that was said that I could not air, that I couldn't air. So that said, right? That's Nazis. They're in Florida. Now, what does Ron DeSantis have to say about this? Apparently nothing. Nothing at all. He hasn't condemned it. And so when some people ask, like, hey, what about the Nazis that, had a demonstration that felt emboldened enough? And this is what's important here. They're very, very bold to go out there and do very public hate demonstrations. And so people ask DeSantis, hey, what do you feel about that? How do you feel about that? All right. That there's Nazis in your state. Apparently, though, asking him is too much. It's too much. Here's spokeswoman Christina Pushaw, who wrote in response to this to a tweet asking if DeSantis will issue a condemnation of said demonstration. Quote, so if the governor himself does not issue a public statement of specific condemnation of whoever this group is, within a time period that the left deems acceptable, he is smeared as a Nazi sympathizer by default? Yes. Yes, actually, he does. Hey, look, I don't make the rules here, all right? I'm just going by GOP rules, all right? Again, Republican rules, and you can go back to when, I don't know, anytime a Muslim, a radical jihadist, right, did some sort of terrorist attack overseas, right? So now every time that happened, and it does happen, well, the right wing came out and said, any Muslims in the government? Keith Ellison, are you going to denounce it? Are you going to denounce radical Islam? Just say it. You have to say it. Why aren't you saying it? Why aren't you saying radical Islam? It's radical Islam. Ilhan Omar, Jihad Squad. Are you going to say something about it? Radical Islam. It's radical Islam. So wait, they're responsible for a very tiny minority of radical, extremists, right? Every Muslim to them is responsible for that and has to come out and denounce that. So then when we apply the same rules, like, hey, there's a white nationalist or there's Nazis that were doing some very hateful stuff, saying some very hateful things, and even far right wingers that were doing some violence, killing police officers, why don't you say something about that? Why don't you denounce that? Oh, no, that's unfair. Oh, my God, that's so unfair. I can't believe you're smearing me for not, for basically saying nothing about the neo-Nazis. Again, this isn't our rules. You made the rules. We're just following what you had done. I mean, again, if you think that it was the duty of every Muslim to loudly denounce this, then if you were actually fair and even-handed, you say, okay, well, white nationalist, a white person, said some pretty horrible things. I guess I'm going to come out and denounce it. Now, it's the same thing, too, when you look at criticism of the right-wing Israeli government and some of their human rights abuses, right? Now, if you criticize them as a Democrat very lightly, well, now, according to the right wing, the Democratic Party has to denounce them all as being anti-Semitic. For example, the same thing they did to Ilhan Omar. They censured her. So, excuse me for calling out the fact that there seems to be a little bit of a double standard, especially since here you have members of the far right doing actual anti-Semitism. Call it out. It's not hard. This is not difficult. It takes 2 seconds. And let me give you an example, right? Orlando Mayor Buddy Dyer, he put out this tweet. Anti-Semitism and hatred are not welcome in this community. Despite displays of hate in Central Florida this weekend, our collective commitment to building an inclusive, compassionate community for all is stronger than ever. Well, there it is. There it is. Wow. Very, very simple. Ron DeSantis could have done that, and nobody would have mentioned anything, because that's the right thing to do. Oh, that was super hard, wasn't it? Wow. Really, really difficult. Really difficult. Now, one more thing. In a now deleted tweet, Pushaw also appeared to question whether the demonstration was fake, not real. Like, oh, how do we know these are actual real Nazis? Now, to be fair, I think that's fair criticism right there, questioning whether or not it's real. Why? It's because, well, in Virginia, you had the group Lincoln Project. Lincoln Project went and did a staged Nazi thing. And that was involved in the state's gubernatorial election. So that right there, and by the way, it's still not the left. Lincoln Project is a right-wing group made of Republicans. So that's why Lincoln Project is trash. And by the way, I say that even though I did enjoy some of their videos that were going after Trump. They're well produced, et cetera, et cetera. They're fun, but they're still Republicans. They're still right-wingers. And that whole group was essentially a grift to try to take money from resistance libs. True. It's true. Like I said, when they did that that staged Nazi video, well, that was some real bullshit. But why? Because it hands ammunition to people who might actually have a stake in defending white nationalists. It's very, very dishonest of them. But, again, that's pretty typical when it comes to right-wingers and their ads. I have no problems with tough ads, but just be honest, stay honest. But in this one, they flew way too close to the sun. Look, there's plenty of actual white nationalists far right. Why not just show them? Show them instead. Just don't make it up. Don't make things up. It helps the opposition. Okay. But in that same thread, by the way, Pushaw tweets, Democrat politicians have falsely insinuated all weekend that the governor's policies are somehow responsible for the protests with Nazi symbols. The same Dem politicians insist falsely that hate groups are the governor's base. It's just so wrong, sick, and exhausting sometimes. Now, one person responds to this, saying, quote, they spend massive amounts of time trying to stir up controversy where it simply doesn't exist. If, in fact, the swastika poster people are human beings, there's absolutely nothing from the governor's desk that promotes or condones it. Keyword if they're even real. Well, they are real. They are real. It's apparently, she even responded saying, it is real. They're called the National Socialist Movement. But that's essentially what Nazis are. They're not actually socialists, though, because it's a far-right movement. But she said, never heard of this group before today. It's less than 200 people, and they've been around for 20 years, pulling nasty, hateful stunts. In any case, it has nothing to do with Governor DeSantis, the GOP, etc. Okay, but you know that white nationalists support the GOP. Now, look, you know the old saying, right? Not all Republicans are Nazis, obviously. Well, obviously. But all Nazis happen to be right-wingers and Republicans. You know why? It's because it's based on their ideology. It's based on their policies. The same policies that try to keep black people and immigrants down while helping only wealthy white people and to help them stay wealthy and powerful. Okay. Moving on. Last story here. But the right-wing conspiracy theories are their bread and butter. However, the establishment has had their own conspiracy theories. In fact, for some time, they've been spreading their own about the mysterious Havana syndrome. Ooh, what is that? What's the Havana syndrome? Well, it appears it is nothing. It's not actually real. But if you would listen to mainstream press, again, this is corporate media, places like Washington Post, etc., then you would think, oh my God, Havana syndrome could this be a new communist super weapon? So now let me get into the details. Again, Havana syndrome had allegedly affected U.S. personnel around the world, even Canadians personnel, with symptoms like headaches, fatigue, dizziness, tinnitus. And some were convinced that this was the work of the secret communist ray guns that were melting their brains. Now, it turns out, as I said, only people's brains that melted are the people who actually ran with this and believed it. Now, let me give you the interim findings of a CIA investigation. They found that Havana syndrome is actually not a sustained campaign against U.S. personnel. Now, that's very interesting coming from the CIA, right? But they said, look, we didn't find any evidence of ray guns. There was no melting of the brains, nothing like that. In fact, it's probably just stress, jet lag, and like a mass, I don't know, like a psychosis, I guess. But again, that did not stop the fact that this isn't real. They found no evidence of ray guns. Didn't mean that there wasn't a massive establishment-backed campaign to fearmonger against certain countries in Latin America. Now, according to an article in Jacobin, on August 9, 2017, the Associated Press, in a report that was republished in outlets from CNBC, CBS, to Politico, claimed that U.S. diplomats had been exposed to an advanced device that operated outside the range of audible sound and had been deployed either inside or outside their residences, for which Washington expelled 2 Cuban diplomats in retaliation. Now, just imagine, right? You take this nonsense conspiracy theory of like ray guns melting your brain, and you actually expel diplomats to another country. What? Insane. Total insanity. All right, so now, within days, nameless U.S. officials were popping up at a variety of trusted liberal-leaning mainstream outlets like CNN and The Guardian to make assertions, or as in the Washington Post, to tell the public that they're investigating this as an attack. Here's some of that reporting. Just the headlines. U.S. diplomats in Cuba were injured by a sonic weapon, Time magazine stated on August 10th. The illnesses appeared to be caused by some kind of sonic wave machine, said a person who was briefed in the situation but was not authorized to comment, reported the New York Times on August 11th. The Daily Beast wrote about the sonic attacks and sound-based assaults suffered by the diplomats in Cuba as part of a long history of sonic warfare dating back millennia on August 12th. Did Russia attack U.S. officials in Cuba? Asked Newsweek on August 10th, speculating widely that a third country, such as Russia, even could have launched the recent attacks, possibly without the knowledge of Cuba. So now we're getting both Cuba and Russia involved. The sonic attacks, everybody, they're melting people's brains. What? Now, again, when these stories came out, I was instantly skeptical. Like, okay. Like, all right, no, this is probably just stress of the job. And, you know, again, fears of maybe like, oh, no, what if they attack? And there were a lot of, again, diplomatic issues that were going on, a lot of stressors, okay? But again, you know, these symptoms could be very easily explained away. But nonetheless, you have people who jumped in. War-hungry politicians and corporate media figures. One of them being Senator Marco Rubio. Senator Marco Rubio promoted Havana syndrome as proof that the Cuban government should be issued sanctions even more. He had held hearings on this, taking up government time. Made repeated assertions, says, it's a documented fact that 24 government officials, the spouses, were victims of some sort of sophisticated attack while stationed at Havana. It's impossible to conduct without the Castro regime knowing about it. But it wasn't just him. It wasn't just Republicans. It was corporate Democrats. Senator Bob Menendez. He had a hearing. He says, if senior Cuban officials did not directly order these attacks, they must have been aware, given tacit approval to foreign agents to operate in Cuba. And of course, former President Donald Trump, who said in 2017 that the Cubans were responsible for diplomats falling ill. Now look, can we trust the CIA? Obviously not. No. But here's the thing. When you look at the motivations of the CIA, what do they want to do? What are they famous for? They're famous for orchestrating coups. like in Iran, like the attempted ones in Venezuela. And so when they come out with information that does not help that case, generally you think, oh, well, they might be being honest about this one time. This one time, they might actually be honest about something. Because that's despite the fact that they really wanted to find it. For example, at the beginning, CIA Director Burns had reportedly been referring to the officially named anomalous health incidents as attacks in private, had tripled the number of medical specialists working on that issue, had tapped a bin Laden manhunt alum to lead the investigation, and had even openly warned Russia of consequences if it was found to be behind these incidences. So look, the CIA was desperate to find something. Oh, of course they wanted to find it. So they could justify sanctions and war against Cuba in this case. They couldn't wait to go after Cuba. Now, the fact that the agency is now saying, unfortunately, we didn't find that. No communist ray guns. Sorry, we wanted to find it. Well, that's pretty significant. And it means that they, for one, don't have evidence, and that the people, secondly, are not buying this. Because it turns out the American people right now are pretty war-weary, right? We're not interested in getting into protracted conflicts with other people. All right. Now, Senator Suzanne Collins, when the CIA published its report, described some surprise. Quote, which seemed to contradict other testimony that we have had. Yes. Representative Adam Schiff said this was, quote, a first step, but not far from the last, to unravel the mystery. Senator Bob Menendez was a little bit more riled up. He said, everything we've been told up to this point has been different. All of a sudden we come up with a different conclusion. Bob Menendez, deeply corrupt, by the way. Deeply corrupt establishment, can't wait to do war. So now it is funny because, again, here you have Republicans and establishment Democrats. The one thing they always love to work together on is more funding for the war machine, for the military industrial complex. And, you know, they actually were able to get together to buy into a nonsense conspiracy theory. And now they're both mad because they can't use that conspiracy theory to push war anymore, at least on this front. But here's the bigger point, right? I said how mainstream corporate media ate it up. Well, they're the very ones that claim to be against disinformation. But apparently they have no problem parroting narratives they receive from the defense industry and from certain politicians. This Havana syndrome, to me, sounded just like Marjorie Taylor Greene and her Jewish space lasers. Complete and utter nonsense. It is a huge level of delusion. But why it was accepted is because the establishment hates Cuba. They hate Russia. They hate Iran, and Venezuela. And so anything to try to manufacture consent against those governments and to try to initiate some sort of conflict, that is something that the press, the mainstream press, always runs with. And don't get me wrong, I think there are big issues with a lot of those countries. But they don't involve us. And they certainly do not merit getting us into another pointless, devastating conflict with any one of them. So the lesson here is, take everything that you see from corporate media when it comes to war, when it comes to conflict, with a grain of salt. Because you never know if it's actually just the donors in the defense industry, the military-industrial complex, trying to manufacture consent for another conflict that's going to make them billions of dollars. Now, as for the people that claim to have been afflicted by this, y'all need a vacation. That's what you really need. All right. That's it. That's all I got for you today. Thank you for going around the nation with me. Appreciate, again, the raid from Mark Monkey. Thank you. I'm Christina. Thank you for resubbing for a month at Tier 1. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Everybody check out Christina, by the way. Give her a follow. Give her a sub. help her out. Help a girl out. She's trying to get how many subs? Well, the more the merrier. Just give her a sub. All right. But everybody, again, thank you for joining me. Please like and share the stream if you haven't already. I'm going to read some super chats here from you all. Very, very kind donations here. Gabby Mathis says, as a Jewish person, as a Jew, I'm so disgusted it's even legal. No more hate and Holocaust. Agreed. That's not funny, says Happy January. Well, happy January to you. And it's about the end. And then Michael Norris says, sorry, Ben, I'm a teacher, admittedly in Australia, and I'm teaching year 3 this year. If somebody was saying that crap in my classroom, they'd be kicked out immediately. But what about free speech? Are you against free speech, Michael? You know, because you got to care so much about free speech. It's not okay to fearmonger, but sonic weapons do exist. I'm not saying that they don't. There's definitely a lot of research into what is considered to be particle weapons, but the fact that they believe that that Cuba has, which is not a rich nation, certainly, but that Cuba has developed sonic weapons to the point of where they could use it against American personnel for no reason. I mean, again, you look at the motivations here. It doesn't make any sense. Sonic weapons are used for riot control, not for covert missions. And again, when you look at it, it just doesn't make any sense. And I know we do have sound cannons here in the United States that we use against, I don't know, peaceful pipeline protesters. So, water cannons as well, but yes. Anyway. I thought Nickelback was a sonic weapon. Could be. Could be. Havana syndrome was caused by a dead raccoon. I'm going to have to look that up because that's even more just hilarious, if true. All right. All right. So, look, everybody, it's been fun. Thank you all. We'll see you tomorrow here. Same time, same place, 4 p.m. Eastern, for another fun stream. Hopefully you all enjoy your Monday. And remember, love you all. Change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see y'all later. Oh my God. Wow.
There's insanity in the control room.
Who's got a hammer?
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.